Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have my guest. I'll let him introduce himself because no one knows him better than himself.
Thank you so much, Adrian. My name is Patrick. I have been an educator for 14 years. I am a product of public schools and have the privilege of serving public schools
Mm.
as a school administrator here in Austin. I'm grateful to have this privilege of sitting across from you to be able to share a little bit of my story and just deeply honored by the fact that your mother was ordered by teachers and high school sponsors back at Palo Duro High School, where I graduated from in 2008.
Awesome. Yeah, you were one of my mom's students, one of her favorites. That's actually how we got to know each other. So I want to know what teacher inspired you the most and why?
I mean, for me, there were so many teachers who had the type of impact on me that
Hmm.
was beneficial to my growth and development. Your mom, Shannon, was absolutely fundamental in showing me that there was a path forward for my type of direct servant leadership style.
Mm.
And even though she did not teach me through theater arts, she became a sponsor of mine and one of my favorite teachers through senior class leadership. I really was grateful to, be underneath her care because it allowed me to have the opportunity to grow as a young leader, trying to find my way amidst some of the high school drama that was ever present. And she just helped me develop the skills that I continue to build upon to this day.
Well, I am so impressed with the leader that you have become. Really and truly. And it's honestly, it's an honor to know that you came from, you know, someone who's also very special to me. Do you have any other teachers you'd like to mention?
My goodness, I can absolutely think of Claire. She was, I don't know if I can use her last name, but she's a speech teacher who was absolutely incredible. And through her class, her professional communications class, I was able to develop the skills and communication that have obviously allowed me to have a successful adult life and career. I can also think of another teacher who was a math teacher of all places. She was a pre-calculus teacher who saw a gift in me in writing and my ability to reason and to never give up, to always be persistent in my ability to learn.
Wow.
She saw that in me in a time in which I didn't really see it in myself. It helped me grow. I can also think of Patricia. She was incredible because she was my speech and debate coach. And then I think of a teacher that really wasn't even my teacher, but taught my favorite subject, history. Stacy, love her to death. In fact, she continued to invite me to speak and recite the "I Have a Dream" speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. every year, uh, post high school graduation. And when I worked for a nonprofit temporarily, she allowed there to be an MLK service project that she had her students do. So she's incredible. I also can think of Sandra. She was a Spanish teacher of mine for seventh and eighth grade when I attended middle school. And then she was at the high school and continued to be such a dynamic influence on my life and is now a really good friend. I know I'm definitely going to miss some people and I hate that. But I love so many people and I'm grateful for their impact on me
Yeah.
as a human.
Yeah, well, thank you to all of those teachers. Y'all did an amazing job. I can attest. And what would you say is the biggest difference between when you went to school and schools now?
One of the most evident differences is the instructional style. It's no longer a sit and get drill and kill type mentality. It is an opportunity for students to work within the zone of proximal development. Students have project based learning. Students have the opportunity to truly interact with the information they are acquiring and they're able to then create something with it. It's not just defining key terms, or, here's a little bit of a snippet of information, and we're going to do some like research paper. It's like, okay, now here's some information we can give you. What can you discover? And then how do you collaborate with your peers on developing some sort of final product? So, really excited about that type of learning, and just you know, i- the utilization and implementation, integration of the technology component that allows there to be more information at a student's fingertips, and
Right.
it gives them more accountability threshold than may have otherwise been there.
Right, and I am so thankful to see that kids are able to interact with technology more because, that's represented in their workplace, their future workplaces is gonna be very technology heavy, and I think, I think it's about a balance, right? I don't think we should always be typing. I think that there's still a place for pen and paper, but the fact that we're teaching them early how to use these technologies, I think will be very beneficial for them in the future.
Our society as a whole is going to benefit from students' awareness of these technological resources. And more importantly, it's going to be key to their understanding of how to communicate effectively across diverse audiences in ever evolving world. When you think of information, just the ability to properly source information, to contextualize it, and corroborate sources, those things are important. And I believe that the more we teach students the responsible use of technology, the better our society will be.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, you have worked in two different school districts. One was a little bit smaller and one is a lot bigger. What would you say is the difference between those district sizes?
There are so many differences. I think in terms of like the ability to impact more people just with the size of the organization, or even the opportunities that exist in one district versus another. I mean, these are two distinct uh, uh, districts, and you had one that was public but in a more rural community, and one that I serve now that is an urban center. And when I think about the number of students that are served in my previous district, the district of which I'm a product, it serves about 25,000 students, whereas the current district I serve serves approximately 73,000 students. So
Yeah.
that that means something in terms of what you have the opportunity to do each day,
Mm.
and it also means that there are more like opportunities to reach the families in need at a more critical level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to know what made you want to become a teacher or an educator?
For me, and I think you'll learn from other people in education, yourself included, like that was not your first option, yet it was always an option on the table. And for me, I was an undergraduate student, then pursuing a pre law degree, which I ultimately obtained. I had been serving as a volunteer mentor through my fraternity for 3 consecutive years at my old middle school. During that time, I befriended a great professional and an exemplary leader, an educator who actually was the superintendent of the school district that was my home back in Amarillo. But that individual, she became one of my best friends and later colleagues in education. She was able to see what the impact that I was making at the school that I was serving as a volunteer. And despite the fact that she was one of my references for law school, she continued to remind me of like my path, my journey, my destiny in education. And, when I did not get accepted to law school and I had to take a moment to do some soul searching and introspectively decide, okay, how do I improve? What's going to be my next step? I reached out to her, and She provided me with an opportunity to serve as a special education paraprofessional at the high school she then was going to be the principal of.
Mm.
And within 2 days of that, I knew.
Yeah.
I knew in my heart, in my soul, like education was always going to be like where I wanted to spend my time, and being an educator was who I was.
Yeah.
So that set me on a path to eventually earned my Master of Arts in Teaching, which was the first of my master's degrees, and concurrently achieved that with my teaching certificate. So that led to me having the opportunity to go back to my middle school again.
Yeah.
And I was at that time an American history teacher, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. What made you wanna move up to administrative roles?
The opportunity to serve and have a
Mm.
better impact on my campus, knowing that I would have the responsibility of keeping the campus safe and providing instructional support to our teachers, which would inevitably result in our students having improved academic outcomes, thus providing our stakeholders with the assurance that we were doing everything possible to provide a quality education for their students.
Yeah, and I wanna know what makes a good leader or a good admin?
When I think of a good leader, good admin, it begins with the willingness to listen
Mm.
because that takes extreme discipline. Then it turns into an an eagerness to learn because you have to constantly put yourself in situations that maybe feel uncomfortable. And then just this commitment to service.
Yeah.
So listening, learning, and serving are what make someone a great administrator. And I see teachers all around me every day that I serve, 78 staff members at my elementary school who all have certain components, certain characteristics of an administrator. And when I think of, listening, learning, and serving, it's it's not hard for me to recognize those great examples of the administrators that I try to replicate the efforts of. When I think of, you know, my current principal, for instance, he constantly puts himself in a position to be available to anyone who needs him. And whether that's a parent who has a concern when the school doors open at 7:25, or if it's a teacher who is facing some sort of instructional challenge, or if it's an issue related to our building and facilities that needs to be addressed, whether it's the HVAC units or something maintenance related that we've submitted work orders for that need to be resolved. Like having that principal that is always there and always responsive, that kind of leadership style is that's what I aspire to replicate in my efforts. Or I think about an opportunity to grow whenever I was in Amarillo. There was a principal there, who was a great friend of mine as well. She herself had served as an instructional coach or a curriculum assessment specialist. And I remember at the elementary school we were serving, she knew how like the task I was being assigned previously under the her predecessor, and they were not directly aligned to areas that were going to, grow, help me grow. Yet they were going to be fundamental in my understanding of education and my continued development of humility as an aspiring educator who wanted to be an administrator. And she just gave me those opportunities to learn from her because she put herself right in the center of the action. She was not above going to provide cafeteria lunch duty or serving a recess or, what making sure that textbooks were directly provided to our teachers, whatever those needs were. Right. She was there. And, I just find it such a blessing to know that I can think of administrators that, helped me get to where I am. and who I try to model my style of leadership with every day.
You mentioned something that I think is really important, humility. I think it's really important to be humble as a leader. When I was in the classroom, if I messed up, I was the first to point it out. One piece of advice I actually got from a veteran teacher was when you mess up, you need to be the first to own up to it. You don't want other people to find it out, and I think that that's a really important quality.
But yes, ma'am, I firmly believe one should always accept responsibility and share credit.
Yeah.
I always share the credit, and anyone who gives me any kind of, praise or commendation, I try to quickly make sure they know it's because of the work of others.
Yeah.
It's because of the teachers, and that's why I'm even able to be successful in my role is because of their work. They're the ones in the trenches every day.
Yeah.
They're the ones who have the opportunity to know what's going on in the daily lives of the students long before those issues arise to the level that I am at as an administrator.
Right. It definitely takes a village.
Yes,
So, what is a time when you felt particularly successful as an educator?
I love that question. I'm very glad you asked. One particular time that it just comes to memory would be, I believe it was my second year in the classroom. Because no one really wants to think about their first year because that year is always terrible and it doesn't matter how many kids come up to you and are like, oh my gosh, thank you for being my teacher. And you think they're your first year kids. They're like, no, I apologize for being your teacher. My second year, I had a student who was known to have quite an extensive disciplinary record. Was also a student that was repeating the eighth grade. So it was very important that we did everything possible to get this student to master the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills or the TEKS so that he could be promoted on to ninth grade and would not be stuck in the middle school. I remember quite well everything about this young man. And, without giving away his name, I would just say could make quite the impression on you with his charm, eh, his just his infectious personality. He was tall and he played sports and he was a friend to all, but also had his own kind of trauma that he was experiencing, which resulted in some of those disciplinary issues. But knowing his circumstances, I I took pride in knowing that he was on my roster. And I remember sixth period, it was the period that was like right after lunch. He would enter my class each day. And because he was also a kid who had repeated the eighth grade and had previously, not so successful experiences developing positive relationships and mutual respect with adults, it was going to be important for him to test those boundaries
Mhm.
and for me to be relentless in my devotion to his success. So after some trial and error and, some, side conversations and some encouragement, um, this kid, this wonderful young man, went from averaging a D to he finally made like a 78.
Mm.
And that I remember that. He made a 78 on a test. And that was like a watershed moment, believe it or not. Because even that high C grade was just enough to show him that it was very possible for him to learn in my class and to be a successful educated student in any class. He then used that as his extrinsic motivation, and he turned around that D average to a B average. And I can say he ultimately was able to be promoted onto ninth grade. And I just remember it's just being able to have that warm embrace with him, shake his hand, give him a little side hug, pat on the back for all of his work. And he was trying to give me credit, and I was refusing to accept it. Only thing I was accepting of was the fact that I stuck to my word, and that was how I never give up on him.
That's so important with the kids is sticking to your word. I noticed pretty early on that even if I just forget something, they're gonna call me out on it. Well, wonderful. Thank you for your work there. That's a beautiful story.
That was a great moment. Love being able to get nostalgic and remember that time.
Yeah. Hypothetically, if you could just snap your fingers and instantly change one thing about education, what would it be?
Let teachers teach.
Mm.
Teachers teach. Good. But that takes more than see. That's like a multifaceted solution because there are ways to create that environment which would enable professional educators to have the ability to teach. And that starts with ensuring that like they have all of their resources that they need, whether it's the professional development or textbooks or the technology. It also comes with increasing funding, increasing the basic allotment for the students, and it comes with changing the formula from average daily attendance to funding by enrollment. I love the uh, elimination of star, not just this little fake we abolish star and replace it with multiple tests, but actually get rid of star. I know high stakes testing, there has to be some sort of standardized test to meet national standards. Yes. But does it have to be high stakes and tied to accountability ratings? No. It doesn't it does not have to be that way. So, I think all of those issues need to be addressed, and they would help, to ensure that teachers would have the opportunity to just teach.
Wonderful. And you touched on environment a little bit. I want to know, what would a good or positive environment that allows teachers to teach, what would that look like in your eyes?
Having had the privilege of providing instructional coaching to teachers for 8 years, I think about my time as an instructional coach and throughout my time as a school administrator. An environment which enables the teachers to teach. There's no like one size fits all model,
Mm, mhm.
but I will say those environments where I feel like I walked into a classroom and felt like the energy was there. Uh, the kids have smiles on their faces because they're able to, take the information that they are, learning, and they're collaborating with their peers on the assignment. And the teacher is able to move freely around the classroom and, provide immediate feedback relevant to the topic or discussion, the teak, whatever is being learned. The students are able to ask questions and nothing is being shot down as being dumb. Students are able to make mistakes, and the teacher feels confident that she can help that student find the correct answer by teaching them how to think rather than teaching them what to think. It's an environment that allows teachers to, if they decide they want to display something on the clear touch board, the smart board, a Novu board, whatever, they can do so. And if they needed to pull out a book and just read an excerpt, they can do that as well. It's like teachers have the flexibility and autonomy they need to provide the types of lessons which allow students to engage fully in the content, and they have fun learning so that by the time they've experienced all there is to the learning, then they can apply what they've learned to the tests that they do have to take, whether it's a formative or summative assessment. But now they have had the benefit of knowing that a teacher had fun teaching them, they have fun learning, and they can take those lived experiences and consider what the correct answer choices are when they have to hold themselves accountable to the results of the assessment.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I had a sign that was gifted to me that I had hanging in my classroom all year right behind my desk that said, "A good teacher makes learning a pleasure." Yeah. And I looked at it every single day and I remembered, we're here to have fun. We're here to learn and we're here to have fun, and it's not all serious. Sometimes we get to giggle.
Yeah,
So,
just, if you recall at the very first part of my answer there, it's about the kids smiling,
yeah,
you know? They have to have fun. They just have to
absolutely.
like fun. We have to make education fun again.
Speaking of fun, I want to hear your funniest school story.
Yeah, that would be, I wanna say it was my 3rd year. By the time it was my 3rd year in the classroom, I think I got a little bit more bold, more maybe I was naive, still didn't know enough, but we were teaching a lesson on taxation without representation. I was an American history teacher, exploration through reconstruction as an 8th grade US history teacher. And we were discussing, and for those who don't know, I mean, the American colonists were being taxed by British Parliament and King George III, and they were being taxed specifically to cover the war debt from the French and Indian War, which occurred. And as a result of protecting the colonists, the Parliament decided that they would tax the colonists despite the fact that they did not have representation in that assembly. So, in order to teach that lesson and make it relevant to 13-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds, we use goldfish and like started out, everyone had a goldfish, we got a little role play scenario. By the end of it, they had been taxed for, the actual things or the sugar, the stamps. We tried to, keep it by the book, like for the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act and everything else. But the students were able to then see, they were losing their goldfish, and they were also getting frustrated playfully at the fact that, the members of their class that were the parliament were just arbitrarily making these decisions unilaterally without the consent of the governed. But we still felt we needed to find a way to like bring this point home because we needed them to understand it just in terms of like where it was going to take us later in the unit, and because we knew that that specific Texas essential knowledge skill that TEKS that would be on the STAR test, which unfortunately has all the pressure in the world. So we decided as a collective group on 8th grade history department that we would create this little letter that the students could take home, discuss with their parents. This role play scenario of we were going to impose taxes for such things as walking on the grass outside as opposed to what the rule was walking on the sidewalk, or walking on the wrong side of the hallway, or maybe not picking up your trash, maybe getting out of your seat without permission. For all of those things, the students would be taxed. They would be charged various amounts. And though we did not make it seem too extreme, in in the conversations that some of our students had with their parents, it caused some unrest. Now, one in particular decided to share it with their parents, and their parents somehow got in touch with the local media, and we were receiving phone calls for these taxes that were being imposed upon their children, and local news media wanted a story out of that. So it was it was a very surreal opportunity. I'm grateful to have experienced it because in that frustration that the kids had and ultimately that the parents had regarding the taxes that we were never going to impose on them, it became a broader lesson and it emphasized our point of taxation without representation. And having that opportunity to then share that through the local news media, it became a learning lesson to not just for the students that were in our classrooms, but also for the entire regional community that received that news. So it was a really cool little you know scenario, which kind of ballooned into a history lesson for everyone of any age.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love the reach of that lesson, how it got so broad.
It was
Oh,
funny, however ridiculous, but grateful to have been able to remind people in the community
Yeah.
that, quality instruction happens because of the brilliance of our teachers
Right.
and the curiosity of our students.
Right. Awesome. Well, is there anything you would like to say to your students?
So many things come to mind. First, I apologize, kids, for anything I messed up on during my first year. I hope you have forgiven me.
Hmm.
No, I want all of the students I've ever interacted with, encountered, or served to know how very proud I am of them.
Mm.
They have overcome a tremendous amount of adversity in their young lives. And in the world in which we live, it does not seem to be becoming any easier. Yet their resilience, their passion, their commitment to excellence, which was displayed in the classrooms, that can continue to carry them and continue to provide sources of inspiration, hope as they enter the workforce or an institution of higher learning. I'm just so incredibly proud of them, and I want them to know I learned from them. Kids, I learned from you. You made me a better person. You made me a better educator. And I am grateful to have had the privilege of serving you. And I look forward to the many more years that I get to serve students as an educator, regardless of where I am.
Beautiful. And since you're a part of administrative leadership, is there anything you would like to say to your teachers?
Thank you.
Mm.
Without hesitation. Thank you. Thank you for being a teacher, a counselor, a nurse, a mom. Thank you for being a superhero
Mm.
because your impact on even one child changes the trajectory of a life.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yes, I wanna echo that. Thank you to all my teachers out there. Y'all are doing beautifully. Y'all are doing a fantastic job, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Well, this has been the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast. Thank you so, so much for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a 5-star review on Spotify and YouTube. It really helps boost our numbers. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. That is at the Unauthorized Teacher Podcast, no spaces. And if you want to have episodes early, please be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon. Thank you so much for listening.